So, good morning, all. Am
Good morning, sir.
I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. So, uh, today we shall be starting with the birthday party of Harold Pinter. Meanwhile, let me confess that I haven't sent any article or material simply because I'm at my village and there's a wedding ceremony going on of my cousin. So, maybe day after tomorrow, I shall be posting some of, not some of, some specific one. So please, okay. Hello.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So anyway, before I move to Harold Pinter, uh, do you have something to ask or something to say about waiting for Godot? We can do that for let us say 10 minutes, and then we shall proceed towards Pinter. Yes.
Sir, I have this question about how do we take the absence of female characters in Waiting for Godot?
How do we?
How do we take the absence of female characters in Waiting for Godot?
You see, uh, I don't think there can be any possible intentional or deliberate uh, way of doing the things. But yes, there are certain theories about that, and primarily I consider when we talk about this to be a text of a post-war era. uh, and if we, though it's a totally mindless and insensible talk to talk about war in terms of men only, right? But while looking at the minimality of characters, as they are in the minimalist terms in that way, so 2 to 4 plus 1, that is 5. And uh, and uh, so do yes, this question also seems relevant when I or we talk about the kind of biography which we did in terms of Beckett's, where we came to know about his girlfriend Suzanne in that way. So it could be a kind of uh, I mean, it may be that Beckett simply didn't include any woman. He would have replaced Astragon, either of the Astragon or Vladimir, with the woman character. But somewhere I purport to think that I intend to think that women, uh, archetypally, they stand for nourishment, protection, security, safety, and most importantly, the furtheration of creation, right? Procreation and creation in terms of fertility and vegetation, if I have to bring in that aspect. So in that way, any of these has no place in the post-war traumatic scenario. So it can be taken as one of the reasons behind not employing any female character. This is what I personally think to be the reason. Yes.
Okay, sir.
I mean, have you read something about it? You can tell me. You can.
No, sir. Actually, this thought came to my mind yesterday only while I was reading the birthday party when I saw there were two female characters in that play. So
Uh,
I felt I was wondering why were they absent. But given the two characters in Waiting for Godot, So Vladimir still stands for someone who's very caring for his
Yes,
friend
there
as
can
Rukno.
be, we can glean certain feminine values, isn't it? We can, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, there is no such thing as we are living in a post. I don't know how many posts we have passed, right? So, while talking about any value in terms of femininity and masculinity, I don't think that's viable at all. No, while we look at the setting of the plane that way, as it is taking place outside the room, outside that cozy and comfortable cubicle, right, outside that ghetto, in that way, it is taking place in the outside world, in the open space, totally, plundered, uh, a stony place, rubbish, rock, nothing that can give us the semblance of life. So in that way, it's quite possible that the very idea of a female entity, the very idea of a female character must have been conceived by the dramatists in terms of a kind of a remote thing, or kind of something which is not likely to happen, or it's not viable at all. So this must have been the reason behind not employing a female character, as it is taking place outside the home, outside the associations and affiliations and the implications of home. If when you're comparing and contrasting with the birthday party in that way, then okay.
Okay, sir. Got it.
So yes, we can talk. We will talk rather, at least maybe 2 or 3 times, while I will be talking about Harold Pinto, the birthday party. So I shall be comparing and contrasting at the very beginning only. Anyway, so anybody else? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, so Harold Pinter. I don't think the name needs any introduction, right? This name doesn't need any introduction. Just wait. Please, please, just wait. Let me go somewhere else. 2 minutes only. Okay, am I audible here?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay. Uh, so, Harold Pinter, and the way we did Samuel Beckett. So, I think the first remark should be and would be the incessant admiration and incessant sense of veneration and respect which Pinter had for the genius of Samuel Beckett. And he has openly accepted it, confessed it, about the kind of genius which Beckett was, and the kind of impression, the kind of influence which he made on the young psyche of Harold Pinter. Now, Harold Pinter was a Jew. This is important because he was born in 1930s, right? And he was just growing in the heyday of Second World War, and the Second World War being a vast graveyard, and mostly the kind of execution, the kind of punishment Jews had to undergo in the hands of Nazi Germans in that way. So that must be kept in the mind at the very outset. So next thing is Harold Pinter's family was a working class family, and in his childhood, his ghetto was bombed time and again, bombed, literally bombed. So one can talk about being bombed, one can talk about a bomb cinema, one can talk about how others are being bombed, right? But every any of and each one of these is just a remote, objectively conceived things in that way. But Painter has had the privilege, ironically, to bear the trauma, pain, and pang of being bombed, and then after being bombed in that way, the pain of separation, the pain of separation, and how at the age of 9 to 10 years only, right? He was evacuated from that ghetto, from this working class community, and he was forced, rather, as he was rescued, evacuated, to live all alone by himself in the daycare or boys hostel or something like that, as the government must have made something. And his parents were literally separated, so he didn't have a childhood of the kind of childhood which we may have, or which may have been enjoying even today. If you have proper parenting, then you may have the privilege to be loved, to be cared, and to have all the privileges which one can think of. Ironically, unfortunately, rather, Harold Pinter didn't have the privilege of any of these parental blisses and parental blesses, right? As he was bombed, he was evacuated, he was forced to live all alone by himself in an alienated mode, separated from his biological parents. And whenever his parents used to visit him once in 6 months, or once in a month, or once in a year, they used to live there for a time being, for a couple of hours in that way. And then that couple of hours might have been the time when he might have felt a kind of happiness, but after that, his after his parents were left, he was again left to nothingness, but to nothingness, alienation, frustration, separation, pang, sorrow, and all those things which we might encounter, rather which we shall be encountering soon in the play The Birthday Party. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
So the very idea, of Harold Pinter as a playwright cannot be completed, cannot be understood, cannot be made until unless we know this part of his life, right? Later on, Harold Pinter went to RADA, that is Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, to learn theatrical nuances. But quite interestingly and quite theatrically, he feigned to be he faked to be uh, what do we call that? He felt to be in the grip of madness and giddiness, right? Dizziness in that way, soon, and he left Rada. In his initial career, he was desiring to be a poet, and he kept writing poems for his lifetime in that way. But between Rada and then writing poems, he was actively involved in acting business, and in fact, he was a part of a moving to a theater company in which he used to play, and he used to play the characters of Shakespeare, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
आवाज नहीं जा रही है क्या? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
इसको बंद रिकॉर्डिंग बंद करनी पड़ेगी. Just wait. Okay, right. So, right. Okay, I mean the will in between, right? The tempo post. So, Harold Pinter, uh, as he happens to write in the later half of 20th century, and the later half of 20th century has been, as you know it very well, a later half of 20th century has been a century of different theatrical inventions. And already I'm quite sure that we have successfully done waiting for Godot as this symbolical act of reading as far as the theater of absurd is concerned, right? Apart from this, we have that the tradition of angry young men, that kitchen sink plays, right? Especially of John Osborne and Delaney Sherlock and yes, Arnold Wesker. So let us just talk about uh, uh, and I personally consider Harold Pinter to be an absurdist playwright, as I told you in the very beginning that he openly confesses the impact of Beckett on him. So he, yes, he is a absurdist playwright, absurdist dramatist, but with certain radical differences, right? And the first radical difference being the setting of the place, right? Whereas, while we find Samuel Beckett's, if you take, if you try to understand Waiting for Godot, right? I was talking about just now, that this play takes place in the open space. There is no shade, no shelter. Even the trees are dried and died one, right? And there is no possibility, at least this is open to us, shown to us, of having a home or a homely treatment, right? This very aspect is not to be found in the plays of Pinter, as Pinter's plays, most of them take place in the locus of the home, locus of the home, the center of the home being the center, home sweet home, right? Home sweet home, with a shade, with a shelter, with a boundary wall. That turns out to be the theatrical enterprise, theatrical exercise of Pinter, and the kind of, the kind of uh, dialogue, the kind of dramatic style and presentation which Pinter vapes is of extraordinary quality, of extraordinary kind, extraordinary type, right? So this is, I think, the first and the foremost. House. How can one talk about absurdity of life, meaningless of life, but this absurdity and meaningless, uh, tinged with tinged with a great amount of satire, a great amount of irony, that is remarkable to be absorbed, to be seen. The next important thing, as she has rightly pointed out, the lack of women character. But here we have, it's not that all his plays, that is, all the painter's plays contain women character, but they are there. And they are playing a very important role. That's a different question whether they have been portrayed negatively or positively. That's the time to, that will be told by the time itself when we shall be doing the play in that way. So a common reader who approaches waiting for Godot for the first time may totally be disillusioned, right? But the same reader, when he or she approaches Harold Pinter, the intensity of that disillusionment is little lowered because there you seem to find the characters with whom you can relate with easily, with whom you can establish a kind of if not strong rapport, strong bond, but at least weak rapport, weak bond. And this makes the plays of Pinter more homely, more understandable, and more approachable and more accessible than the play which we did last, that is Waiting for Godot. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Harold Pinter, when I'm talking about him as a playwright, and I'm talking about him as establishing a name, a brand, and the way he has converted his name as an adjective, and you might be knowing the word Pinteresque. This is the zenith of success. This is the constant reminder of a successful playwright in that way. So we shall be talking about those very soon. But the moment we talk about Pinter as an absurdist playwright, as a playwright who wrote in the shade and shadow of his own childhood that is totally traumatic, emotions and regions totally widely apart, things fall apart, center can't hold, right? So in that way it becomes but necessary at the same time to consider his plays as deeply infused with the questions of existence, the questions of existence. And at this juncture I would like to quote Martin Aslan, the famous critic, and he has something important, something meaningful to offer while relating and while commenting on the plays and the playwriting of Harold Pinter. So, what does he say? Martin Aslan. Let us look at him first. So, Martin Aslan says that it is all the more significant that Pinter, like Heidegger, takes as his starting point in man's confrontation with himself. Look at this very phrase, man's confrontation with himself. I think it doesn't need any extra explanation because so far we must have been in a situation to understand the meaning of how does one encounter himself? How does one confront oneself? Right? Okay, so this is what Estlin has to say. Painter, like Heidegger, takes as his starting point in man's confrontation with himself and the nature of his own being, that talks about fundamental anxiety. And this anxiety is nothing less than a living being's basic awareness of the threat of non being or of annihilation. Confrontation, existence, anxiety, suffused with the questions and answers of threatenings and the questions of annihilation, and that grappling with the issues of being and non being. Being in itself, being for itself, and being for nothingness. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
This is what Martin Aslin has to say while making a commentary on the plays of Harold Pinter. Huh, sorry. So now, if I have to proceed further, uh, there are several aspects and shades of Pinter's plays, and I would like to talk about them um, uh, one by one, one by one. And before I proceed to them, let us just let me refer to the comments of the Nobel Prize Committee. Nobel Prize Committee. As you must be knowing that Pinter was awarded Nobel Prize in the year 2005, right? So he was given a Nobel Prize, as the committee says, for existential exploration. For existential exploration and commitment. Political commitment. So this existential exploration, let us just take it as one shade of his dramaturgy, and political commentary, a political commitment, a political allegiance, a political agenda being the second shade of his dramaturgy. Uh, 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 his plays uncover the precipice under everyday prattle and forces entry into operations closed room. Just look at that. Everyday happenings, everyday occurrences, everyday incidents, right? Where do these everyday happenings take place? In the cricket field? No. In the hockey field? No. In the war front? No. Where do they take place? In the locus of the room. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
In the locus of the room, in the heart of the room, closed rooms. And there, that becomes a site, that becomes a place which paves the way for the mind-blowing exploration of existential dilemmas tinged with frustrations, alienations, traumatic experiences, pangs, anguishes, and so many other things which make Painter Pinteresque, which make Painter Pinteresque, right? His existential exploration, as I was talking about his childhood experiences, and it must be aligned with that, because when you read his early plays, especially his first ones, Room and the Dumb Waiter, which are the one act plays, and his first full length play, that is the one prescribed to us, which came out in the year 1958, The Birthday Party, along with the homecoming and the caretaker, they all talk about a common man or layman's worries, anxieties, concerns, right? They all talk about the existential, uh, uh, broodings, existential grapplings, existential questions, right? And the thing is, existence was there in Hamlet, in Shakespeare. Existence must have been in the story of the Adam and Eve as well. Existence would be in your life as well. Existence was in Waiting for Godot, but existence was also there in Harold Pinter's plays. But what is most striking thing? How does one approach? How does one approach? Rather, how does one describe this existential crisis? This, I think, this is what makes Pinteresque. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes. So, as far as a political commitment is concerned, right? Political commitment means nobody can be apolitical. Everybody has to be political. But let me just quote one of the passages which he is very famous, for which he is very famous to be said. And he said what? I'm just quoting one of his passages: freedom, democracy, and liberation. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Freedom, democracy, and liberation. These terms are enunciated by Bush, George Bush, one of the American presidents, and Tony Blair, Prime Minister of England, essentially mean freedom, democracy, and liberation. These terms, as enunciated by Bush and Blair, essentially mean death, destruction, and chaos. Death, destruction, and chaos. The invasion of Iraq was an act of state terrorism. I believe they must be arraigned at the criminal court of justice and tried as war criminals. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
I mean, can you think of?
Yes, sir.
I just think about Harold Pinter. Harold Pinter, which was who was addressed by the Nobel Committee as what? A Western white male with a world reputation. A Western white male with a world reputation, surprisingly, astonishingly, who blatantly criticized the joint moves of both Bush and Tony Blair, as England was doing once upon a time in the last before I mean in the last century and before and in the I mean in 17th 18th century. The two are doing the same. The two, according to him, in the name of freedom, democracy, and liberation, which to Pinter is nothing but death, destruction, and chaos. This is the kind of political commitment which I was talking about. I have several instances of his political outbursts, state of being his outspoken quality, which some of them are very uh, very offensive, if you look at that from traditional point of view, right? But we all must at the same time must know that he was having a good friendship with his American counterpart, Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller himself was a writer of political commitment, and both of them had the privilege to visit Turkey, and the Turkey then was being raided by the American forces, and he was summoned by the American general there, and the American general was simply talking, making him understand the kind of things which are there, politically, morally, philosophically, economic, psychologically, anthropologically. Pinter, please do understand. And Pinter says, I have the electricity in my genitals. It's a kind of slang. It's a kind of slang. But the counter argument, the kind of counter discursive argument which Pinter proposed, talking about one's genitals, when the general is talking about anthropological, sociological, philosophical, psychological implications of Turkey being raided, then one is talking about something which he must not have talked about. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
So this is the kind of the treatment with language, treatment with the language, talking about one's genitals. Oh my God! But this is what Pinter has to offer, has to say. And at this juncture, I would like to refer to one of his important quotes, which talks about the very process of meaning making process. And there, Pinter says, meaning begins in the words, in the action continues in your head and ends nowhere. Meaning begins in the words, in the action continues in your head and ends nowhere. Meaning which is resolved, parceled, labeled, and ready for export is dead, impertinent, and meaningless. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Right now, the meaning which is parceled, labeled, determined, and ready for export is dead, impertinent, and meaningless. Harold Pinter's plays are often interpreted as being comedy of menace. Comedy of menace. Comedy of menace was a term that was popularized by David Campton. David Campton, in his play The Lunatic View. The Lunatic View, where the author, that is in the Comedy of Menace, the author, the dramatist, the playwright, allows the readers, allows the audiences, allows the readers to eavesdrop, to eavesdrop on the play of domination and submission. Play of what? Domination and submission, which we have seen in the previous play, Waiting for Godot. But we have to see it in different dimensions when it comes to the plays of Harold Pinter. So Ip's drop on the play of domination and submission, hidden in the most mundane of conversations. Hidden, where is that hidden? Domination and submission. In the most mundane conversations, we find people defending against, in Comedy of Menace, we find people defending against intrusion or their own impulses by entrenching themselves in a reduced and controlled existence. Reduced and controlled existence. So, if you have to glean or you have to highlight the key words of the Comedy of Menace, the first thing is the act of Ips dropping. The second is the act of play of domination and submission. Where is it? Is it in the domination and submission in terms of Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi, Nitish Kumar, Tejaswi Yadav? No. This is the saga of domination and submission as it is hidden in the most mundane of conversations and existence. You and me. In Comedy of Menace, we find people defending themselves against intrusion, their own impulses, by entrenching themselves in a reduced and controlled existence. Am I clear? Hello? Are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It talks about volatility, volatility and elusiveness of the past, as we have seen in the case of Waiting for Godot. This Comedy of Menace brings us close to the adjectivized name of Pinter, that is Pinteresque, which talks about silence. Which talks about what? Silence. And this silence could be of two types. The first silence could be wordless. इतना सन्नाटा क्यों है भाई? Something like that. Wordless. And different, another silence could be full of words. Full of words. Are you getting the point or not? Two types of silences. The first is what? No use of words. There's one is interesting anecdote about that. As Pinter himself was an actor, so in most of the cases of the performances of his own plays, he used to sit in the rehearsal durings in that way. So at one time, one actor has to go for the kind of silence, and he has to Pinter had noted three dots, dot dot dot. Actor must have gone for dot dot. So he said, excuse me, It's dot, 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 not dot and dot. Am I clear? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. So, silence of two kinds, wordless, and second is full of words. See, the point is that silence is not that silence in terms of serenity and calm. No, this silence is threatening. This silence is menacing. This silence is unwarranted. Right? So, this Pinterest, which largely harbors on silence, and it talks about subtexts. So, you have a text which might talk about the apparent meaning. But what is subtext? The meaning which is hidden, concealed, and you have to eavesdrop. You have to walk in still smoothly, and you have to grab the meaning behind the mukhota, the meaning behind the mask, the meaning behind the silence, the meaning behind the pregnant pauses. Pause. So, subtext, silence, subtext, and then pauses. Pause. Pause is not something which is there to make a kind of interruption. Pause is Pinterest. Pause is full of meaning, which you as a reader have to unearth, have to identify, and have to fill with the meanings of your own likes and maybe dislikes in that way. So, Pinterest, silence, subtext, pauses, which all can be described in the interpretations of disturbed state of mind, fear, and dreadfulness, leading to threat and a strong feeling of being anxious. It's all about comedy of menace and Pinterest. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
In the last, I shall be taking help again a quote from Nobel Committee, which says that painter restored theater to its basic elements, an enclosed space and unpredictable dialogue where people are at the mercy of each other and pretense crumbles. Pretense, hypocrisy. Pretense crumbles with a minimum of plot. Drama emerges from the power of struggle and hide and seek of interlocutions interlocutions. So already we have seen domination, submission, silence, pauses, texts, subtexts. Now, what do we have? Basic elements of enclosed space, unpredictable dialogue, where people are at the mercy of each other, and where pretense, hypocrisy, affectation crumbles with a minimum plot, minimum story, plot being the soul of tragedy. A drama, Aristotle would have said so. He has said such in fact. So with a minimum of plot, drama emerges from the power struggle and then hide and seek of interlocutions. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That's all for today. कुछ समझ में आया?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Okay, then we shall meet tomorrow. Maybe let us see. Will I will notify you because it's a waiting function today. So I may be, I don't know. Anyway, I will let you know accordingly by tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, please read the first act of the birthday party. You had the text with you, all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
So try to read and reread the text once again, as I have tried to give you something specific to begin with the plays of Pinter, especially the birthday party, because it talks about that concept of home, the concept of boarding house, somebody who is far away from his home, has nothing much to do with the past. His past is volatile and indecisive, and how two strangers, two unknown faces come into life and they make life hell. They make life mess. And the birthday party, which we generally associate with candles, cakes, parties, it turns out to be a comedy of menace, where the identity is at stake, the identity is in danger. The birthday party. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.